The general quarters alarm was still howling when the captain slammed her into the bulkhead. I was 6 feet away. I need to be precise about that because everything that followed was something I saw directly, without obstruction, and I have recounted it to 3 different review boards and my account has not changed, because there is only one version of what happened. I was moving aft along the passageway to reach the bridge team with the Admiral's morning brief packet when the GQ alarm triggered, that wall-to-wall bone-rattling klaxon that turns every sailor on a warship into the same organism moving toward the same purpose, and the passageway went from empty to crowded in about 8 seconds. Hatches banging open, boots on non-skid, men flowing toward their battle stations in the organized rush of a crew that has done this before. The captain came out of the wardroom hatch at a diagonal, moving fast, head down, hand already reaching for the ladder rail. The woman in the khaki uniform was coming forward from the stern section with a calm, measured pace that was distinctly at odds with the GQ flow around her, and in the press of the passageway at the section frame they met at speed, and she went into the bulkhead shoulder first, hard enough that I heard the impact over the alarm. She caught herself on the emergency handhold and did not go down. The captain did not stop. That is the thing you need to understand about what happened. He did not stop or look back. He put his hand out flat open, a clearing motion, and shoved her further into the steel and moved on toward the bridge. Not the inadvertent contact of 2 people navigating a crowded corridor, a deliberate push. The kind of push that says, you are in my way and my way matters and you do not. She straightened. She stood in the passageway with the rush of men still flowing past her, and she looked at the captain's back as he moved away, and her face held an expression I have tried more than once to name accurately. The closest I've managed is this: she was deciding something, not reacting, deciding. There is a difference, and the difference was visible in the stillness of her features, the complete absence of heat. I should tell you who she was. I knew exactly who she was because I was her aide, petty officer first class Grawl, temporarily assigned to her staff for the duration of the ship visit. Her name was Rear Admiral Vera Lind. She was the strike group commander, 2-star, with authority over every hull in our formation, every aircraft in our wing, every commanding officer in the task group, including the man who had just shoved her against a bulkhead and kept walking. She had come aboard 2 days before with minimal staff and no ceremony, which was her habit. No piping aboard, no side boys, no formal reception in the hangar bay. She arrived in working khakis with no stars visible on her collar, checked in through the quarterdeck on a boarding list that gave her name without her title, and spent her first full day on the ship walking spaces, engineering, the combat information center, the galley, the berthing decks, in the way that a person walks through a building they are responsible for but have not recently visited. She spoke to junior sailors. She looked at equipment. She asked questions of the people who worked closest to the actual machinery and the actual problems. This was her method. She had told me, early in my assignment to her, that you learn more about a ship in 3 hours of wandering without announcement than you learn in 3 days of formal inspection. The announced visit produced a clean ship. The unannounced walk produced a true one. I had learned this about her in 11 months as her aide, and I had also learned other things. She had commissioned through ROTC, first in her family to serve. She had been a surface warfare officer for 22 years before her first major command, and in those 22 years she had made department head on 2 ships, executive officer on a guided missile destroyer, and commanding officer of a cruiser during a deployment that included 1 significant engagement with surface contacts off the Ardalan Straits. She had not sought attention for that engagement, and the record of it was classified in ways I did not have access to. But men who had served with her on that deployment spoke about it in the shorthand way that men use when the details are restricted but the result is not. She had brought her ship and crew home intact. The engagement report, I was told by one of her former XOs, contained a section on tactical decision-making that the Naval War College had incorporated into its curriculum. None of that was visible on her at any given moment. She did not carry it in the way some officers carry their record forward, as a kind of advance notice. She carried it the way a person carries the things that have shaped them, which is inward, where it does the actual work. Captain Drent had been briefed on her presence and her identity. The briefing had occurred in the ship's wardroom 46 hours before the passageway incident, and I had been present for it, and Admiral Lind had been present for it, seated at the far end of the wardroom table in those same working khakis, and Drent had looked directly at her at least 3 times during the briefing, while his operations officer summarized her schedule. He had apparently not connected the woman at the wardroom table to the woman in the passageway. Or he had. I did not know at that moment which of those 2 explanations was true. I learned the answer later. She turned to me after he had rounded the corner. I had been holding the brief packet the whole time. My hand was tight on it. I became aware of the tightness in my hand, and I made it stop, because what was happening was not something I was supposed to react to visibly. I was an aide. My job was to observe accurately and keep my face neutral and be useful when called upon. She looked at me for a moment, not with any particular expression, just registering me, checking that I was there and functional. "Come with me, Petty Officer Grawl." I fell in behind her. She moved forward at the same pace she had been moving before the collision, unhurried, deliberate, each step placed on the non-skid with the particular assurance of someone for whom this environment is native. The GQ alarm was still cycling in its 30-second intervals, and men were still moving around us, and she moved through all of it the same way. The GQ exercise had been called without notification to the inspection team, which was either a genuine scheduling oversight or something else. I did not have an opinion about which at the time. I noted it. On the bridge, Captain Drent was at the chart table, getting station reports as they came in. His watch team was working well, crisp, organized, the kind of GQ performance that comes from a crew that drills seriously. I will give them that credit because it is accurate and because accuracy matters in an account like this. Drent looked up when she came through the bridge hatch. His expression moved through recognition, and through something after recognition that was not quite anything I have a clean name for, and then it settled into the particular blankness of a man who is calculating forward. He started to say something. She held up one hand. It was a small gesture, palm facing him, fingers relaxed, nothing theatrical about it. She was looking at the tactical display and the chart table and the watch log. She spent perhaps 45 seconds doing that, reading the board, tracking the evolution already in progress, getting her own read before she needed anything from anyone else. Then she looked at him. "Captain Drent," she said, "I need your XO on the bridge." He said, "Admiral, I'd like to address what happened." "I know what happened," she said. "I was in the passageway. I need your executive officer." Lieutenant Commander Ferris, the OOD, was already reaching for the 1MC because he had been on the bridge. He had seen the captain come in. He had seen what came in behind the captain, and he had worked the arithmetic. In the time it took Tesh to arrive, she stood at the tactical display and looked at the board. She did not look at Drent, and he did not speak to her. The bridge team held their positions. Ferris had the watch, and he was running it, fielding the station reports as they came in, noting the times, running the evolution the way the evolution was supposed to run, and she watched him do that with the same attention she put on everything, and twice she made a note on the pad in her breast pocket. The ship's phone rang once. Ferris answered it, relayed an answer, hung up. She watched him do that too. Commander Tesh arrived in under 3 minutes. He was a lean, careful man, the kind of executive officer who reads a room before he speaks. He read this one in about 2 seconds and stood by the chart table without saying anything unnecessary. "XO," Admiral Lind said, "please log that I'm conducting a review of this GQ evolution as of this moment." "Aye, Admiral." She moved to the tactical display, and she ran the evolution review herself. She asked for reports from each station in order, and she listened to each report and she asked follow-up questions. Two communications gaps surfaced, one between main battery control and CIC, one between the engineering watch and the bridge, and she noted both without comment until she had heard everything. She asked the weapons officer 3 specific questions about CIWS readiness, and the weapons officer answered all 3 accurately and completely. She asked the ops officer 1 question the ops officer could not answer because the relevant data had not been included in the pre-GQ brief. She noted that too. 12 minutes for the review, start to finish. I watched a woman who had commanded destroyers and a cruiser and then a carrier, and then a strike group run through a GQ review the way a master craftsman runs through a familiar task. Not quickly, not slowly, but at exactly the speed the task warrants, with the full weight of accumulated knowledge behind every question. The bridge team responded to her clearly and professionally. They had not, I think, been expecting to be examined in this manner during a training exercise, and the ones who were well prepared showed it, and the one who wasn't showed that too. When she finished, she turned to Captain Drent, who had been standing at the forward windows for the 12 minutes of the review with his hands clasped behind his back, not speaking, because she had not invited him to speak, and she was not asking him questions. "Captain Drent," she said, "2 items. First, the communications gap between main battery control and CIC ran 19 seconds in the opening phase of this evolution. At the closure speed of an actual inbound contact, 19 seconds is not a survivable error. I want a written corrective plan on my desk by 800 tomorrow." "Aye, Admiral." "Second item," she said, and the bridge went quiet, not visibly, not with any dramatic pause, but with that particular quality of attention that overtakes a group of people when they know something is about to be said that will matter. What occurred in the passageway below this bridge was captured on 2 corridor cameras. I observed it directly. You were present. I want to ask you a question and I want a direct answer. Drent was still at the forward windows. The ship moved under all of us, as ships do, the small, steady correction of course, the hum of the propulsion plant, the life of a vessel that continues regardless of what occurs among its human occupants. "Did you recognize me in that passageway?" 3 seconds. "The passageway was crowded, Admiral. I was moving under GQ priority." "That is not the question I asked." A longer silence. Ferris was studying the gyrocompass repeater. Tesh was looking at the chart table. Lieutenant Prakash, the weapons officer, had found something requiring close attention in the middle distance. "I recognized you," Drent said. "Thank you," she said. She looked at Tesh. "Commander Tesh, assume the officer of the deck and note the time. Please arrange for the passageway footage to be logged with the formal record of this review. Weapons officer, your performance on my technical questions was accurate and complete. Make sure that's reflected in your department's training log." Prakash said, "Aye, Admiral." Tesh said, "Aye, ma'am," and moved to the con. She looked at Drent. No heat in it, no performance. A decision had been made before she arrived on this bridge. She had made it in the passageway and the moment after she straightened and watched him walk away, and the 12 minutes of the review had been exactly what they appeared to be. A professional doing her job completely before addressing the other matter, because you do not shortchange the ship's review to address your own incident. You do the work. Then you deal with what needs dealing. "Captain Drent," she said, "you are relieved of command effective now. Please go to your quarters and remain available for formal review. Commander Tesh has the ship." She said it at normal conversational volume, even, exact, the same register she had used for every other thing she had said on that bridge. Drent stood at the forward windows for a moment. Then he nodded, a single, finished nod, and left the bridge without speaking. Nobody moved. The ship's ventilation hummed. The propulsion plant ran its steady note beneath us. 13 people on that bridge and not one of them made a sound for what felt like a long time but was probably 15 seconds. Admiral Lind looked at the tactical display. "XO," she said, "what's your engineering plant status during the GQ evolution? I didn't hear the engine room in the rotation." Tesh gave her the answer. She asked 2 more questions about propulsion readiness during GQ and wrote the answers in the small notepad she carried in her breast pocket. Then she looked up and looked at the bridge team, all of them, and she said, "The balance of this evolution was well executed. Your drill timing is in the upper quarter of the strike group. Note that in your log." Farah said, "Thank you, Admiral." She said, "Don't thank me, keep it there." I looked at my watch. It was 13:13. The bridge felt different from how it had felt 11 minutes ago. Not the configuration of it. Nothing physical had changed except that Tesh was at the con instead of Faris, and Drent was no longer at the forward windows. What had changed was something in the air of the room, the particular texture of a space after something large and irreversible has been decided. The watch team was working. The ship was running. The GQ evolution had been logged and the review was formally complete. And Rear Admiral Vera Lind was standing at the chart table writing in her notepad, as if the last 11 minutes had been unremarkable. I thought about that for a moment, about what it would take for the last 11 minutes to feel unremarkable from the inside. To review a GQ evolution, identify 2 communications gaps, note a brief deficiency, commend a weapons officer, relieve a commanding officer, and reassign the watch, and to do all of it at the pace of someone running a normal professional morning. That would take a certain kind of accumulated control over one's own internal weather that I could only describe as an earned thing. Not performed. Earned. Built up over 20+ years of hard decisions made correctly, until decisions like this no longer required the extra effort that makes them look like decisions. We left the bridge at 13:15. She walked back down the passageway at the same pace, past the same section frame. She did not look at the frame. I was 2 paces behind her, and I watched her not look at it, and I thought that was probably the most deliberate thing I had seen in a day full of deliberate things, not from anger or avoidance, but from the simple discipline of not giving a physical location more significance than it required. At the ladder to the flag spaces, she turned to me. "Petty Officer Grawl, what did you observe today?" I understood the question. She asked it not because she needed my account, but because she wanted me to have organized my own. I thought for a moment. "A GQ evolution reviewed by a flag officer," I said. "2 communications gaps documented, 1 ops brief deficiency, a relief of command at 15:52. She waited. "And a woman who was shoved against a bulkhead and didn't raise her voice," I said. She held my eyes for a moment with the same level expression she used on the chart table and the tactical display and Drent at the forward windows. "Write it accurately," she said. "All of it, that is what the record is for." She went up the ladder. I stood in the passageway for a moment and I thought about the chain of events. Alarm, corridor, impact, the passageway cameras running, the bridge review, 12 clean minutes of a professional doing her job, and then the short sentence that ended it. I thought about what is required, the specific quality of self-possession required, to absorb that moment in a corridor, in a moving ship, under a GQ alarm, and then spend 12 minutes reviewing communications gaps and CIWS readiness reports, and asking the weapons officer about ammunition state before addressing the other thing. I thought about the word recognized, about what it meant that the answer was yes. The formal review took 3 days and produced a document I did not have access to, but whose conclusions were relayed to the ship through normal channels. The passageway footage was part of the record. The testimony of the bridge watch team was part of the record. The communications gaps from the GQ evolution were part of the record. The review board apparently had everything it needed and did not need to deliberate at length. I heard from Faris, who heard from Tesh. that when the board convened, Drent had been cooperative and had not offered any account that differed materially from the camera footage and witness statements. What he had acknowledged in that moment on the bridge, "Yes, I recognized you," he apparently did not walk back in the formal setting. Whatever else he was honest about that part. Captain Drent was formally removed by written order 3 days later. Commander Tesh brought the ship into port. The crew performed correctly and professionally through the handover, and I never heard a word of complaint from them about how the week had gone, which told me something about Tesh and something about the crew and something about the quality of the institution Admiral Lind served. I transferred off that ship 2 months later, under Commander Tesh's brief command and then under Tesh's successor, who arrived from the fleet and found a ship that was running well and a crew that knew its drills and an XO who had the institutional memory to make the handover clean. On my last day, her flag secretary delivered a handwritten note. It said, "Petty Officer Grawl, your log entry from the 14th was thorough and accurate. That kind of record keeping is the backbone of accountability. Keep it up throughout your career." I kept the note. It is behind my evaluations in my service record, where I know where it is. She did not need anyone to defend her or explain her that day in the passageway. The cameras had it. The bridge watch team had it. The ship's formal record had it. She walked through that corridor and she absorbed what happened and she made her decision in the silence after it, and then she went and did her job completely before collecting on the decision. That is the most disciplined and the most authoritative thing I have ever witnessed a human being do in uniform. That is what flag rank looks like when it is earned, and not merely achieved.